Tourism Committee of the City Council. Councilman Bennett of the 11th District is to my right, your left, and Councilman Gaino is to my left, your right.
I'm usually to your left.
That's right, you're usually to my, very far to my left, but that's good when you go out to the beach. It's good to get out there. Good morning to all. We're going to take the commissioner second. We're just going to go through a little business. We want to make sure everybody that's here. So we're going to take the commissioners after we go through some of the business here. So let's just see right here.
He wants to do the last.
Number 7, I believe.
Item number 7 is a report from the Board of Airport Commissioners relative to the proposed First Amendment to a lease with American Airlines covering the Operation Support Facility located at 7260 World Wade West within Los Angeles International Airport.
Mr. CAO.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Kreitz with the CAO's office. Item number 7 before you is a First Amendment to an existing lease with American Airlines at LAX. And we're recommending this because it allows LAWA to retain a tenant in good standing. It allows them to obtain additional lease revenue of approximately $4.8 million over 5 years while securing its revenue stream for this facility, this operations facility. It allows LAWA to own, at the end of the term, $9.1 million in capital improvements made by American Airlines. And it also benefits American Airlines with their pending merger and restructuring. So for those reasons, we recommend approval.
Your board approved it?
Yes.
Good. Anything from the airport department on this?
No, we're supported.
Very good. Okay, members?
I'm good.
Okay, so ordered. Everybody voted. Mr. Clerk, next.
Item number 8 is a report from the Board of Airport Commissioners relative to the proposed operating agreement with AMCO Parking, DBA ABM Parking Services to operate transportation services for the LA Ontario International Airport Consolidated Rental Car Facility.
Mr. Chairman, the CEO recommends this as well. This proposed agreement is recommended as a result of the fact that it will reflect a new model for shuttle services at LA Ontario Airport. It continues the free passenger shuttle at that airport, improves the quality of that shuttle service, as well as allowing for the development of a separate RFP specifically for shuttle service between the airport's parking facilities and the terminals. So for those reasons, we also recommend approval.
Both for Los Angeles International and for Ontario?
This is only for Ontario.
So it's Los Angeles, Ontario. It's on 2 separate lines in the report here, so that's what confused me. This is all for Ontario, so. Sounds good? Members?
Move to approve.
Move to approve, seconded by Mr. Vaughn, so ordered. Number 9, please. Number 9.
Yes.
Name the artist, number 9. What group? Very good. The Beatles. Okay, you got it right.
Under item number 9, we have motion O'Farrell Bonin. This was introduced on August 6th, proposing that the council ask Los Angeles World Airports and the county's Experience LA to report to council with recommendations on the installation of quick response codes at LAX and other tourist-oriented locations.
Good. So let's hear from Representative from Mr. O'Farrell, the fine councilman of the 13th District. Identify yourself and tell us the effort that you want to see achieved here.
Good morning, council members. David Heaton with Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell. What you have before you today is an effort by the council member to have the idea of integrating LAX tourism spots throughout the city with a more updated, modern outreach system that we can discuss today and really hammer out the details of.
Like phone booths where there's yellow pages and white pages to look through? Do you know what they are?
Maybe a modern.
You know yellow page and white pages? I was just teasing you. Very good. Let me hear from the great representative of the Los Angeles Tourism Board, Patty McJennett, please.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. We have been working closely with the airport in terms of, a couple different signage opportunities that we have, but I think the conversation probably is a bigger conversation in terms of how do we connect the visitor at different points, not only through the airport, but through the city, with the information that they need in terms of not only getting around, but how to best experience Los Angeles. So just if I talk for a minute about what we're doing at the airport, most of the signage, as you know, at the airport is controlled by JC&Co. in terms of the whole advertising program. We've worked with them in the past. They have given us the remnant space that they don't sell, to help us put our welcome messages. There are also what we call welcome boards that usually carry a message from the mayor, and on there we do.
What happened to all the old pictures of Mr. Villaraigosa? Did you give him one?
The what? The what?
All the old pictures of Mr. Villaraigosa. There were a lot there.
They are changing.
His
There's
new
about
neighborhood in Venice, the whole block.
Oh, good.
The name is...
There's about 26 of those boards, and they are under redesign. And so anyway, those do carry a branding for discoverlosangeles.com, which is our website, which is the ultimate resource. We have used QR codes on different ads and things that we do. And I think we can have further conversation if that's the best technology to be using. There are some in marketing who say that the QR codes kind of have been replaced with other types of social media icons. And so we certainly have been putting the social media icons to try and create awareness, because one might ask, particularly at the airport, particularly where those boards are, is people are coming out, they're coming off the gate, they've got everything in their hands, their luggage isn't necessarily the time that they may whip out their phones and have to download something. But then get into a whole conversation about QR codes. A lot of the Droids and a lot of the smartphones don't carry the preloaded app. So certainly the real point of the conversation, I think, should not be whether it's a QR code or whether it's another social media icon. It's just that we should be doing it and making sure that at every asset that we can possibly utilize at the airport,
Right.
That we're doing that. And then Bill, I'll let him talk in a few minutes, because he's been working with the airport also in terms of...
Bill's your guy.
Bill is head of our digital.
Right.
and
Introduce yourself, Bill.
channels.
Good job.
Bill Cars, Director of Digital Marketing for the LA Tourism and Convention Board. So we're talking earlier about different ways to engage with the visitors that are coming in market. And through our social channels right now, we're doing an amazing job. We have 1 million fans on Facebook. We engage with 30,000 people on Twitter. So when people are coming in to the airport, how do we get them to engage with us? And the quickest way is through the hashtag right now, but definitely exploring the QR code is something that we can look at. We've had it before on ads at the airport. Limited engagement, people are obviously just kind of looking to get that quick information, and scanning something may not be the quickest way, but we are open to looking into this more.
Right. And Mark, what is the best airport in the country that's hashtagged up?
It's Los Angeles International Airport.
Really? Well, we're number one. I know Mr. Bonner, he's going to
Well,
show
when you
you.
say the best, I
Yeah.
don't have any
No.
other answer for you right there.
Right.
Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. We're happy to be partnering up with both LA Tourism and with the JC&Co, our advertising concessionaire, to put together a program that will effectively market LA. But I think that's really LA Tourism's push, and we're happy to work with them.
Well, there's got to be some, I don't know if it's San Francisco or Seattle or Portland, they may have a little edge where they've been a little more. I don't know, Mike, you a man of the world, and to see what it is, and if we could do that, because I am not. I like to see somebody. I like to talk to somebody. I'm not a hashtagger, but there's a new world out there. And I understand people do that, and they get a lot of information. In fact, my deputies, after taking their child to school, just wanted me to see this is what we're talking about, this little symbol right here that tells you all about Big Mac, but we want to tell you all about the places to see in Los Angeles. But let me start with the councilman who represents the airport area, Mr. Bonin, and then I'm sure Mr. Gaino with the port would like some questions. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. First question, I guess, is in your use of social media, this is for you guys, in your use of social media, have you been using the QR codes in other places?
Yes, we've been using them primarily in ads, and we have an information center that we use them there as well, which is pretty easy, but the engagement hasn't been what we would like it to be.
Yeah, those would be on the print ads or, out of home, but I think when you look at digital advertisement, it's automatic click to the site, so there's no real need to have the QR code on the digital ad, but we're definitely able to track the QR code, which is a huge benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that it's not a particularly heavy lift to use the QR code. If you have, something promoting Los Angeles in general, it could go to your website. If you have something that is promoting Venice Beach, and you know how important it is to be promoting Venice Beach as opposed to the Santa Monica Pier,
Yes.
we have that conversation all the time, that it would take you to a Venice Beach site. If you have something that is promoting Hollywood, it would take you to a Hollywood site. I know J.C. Ducot controls the advertising space, but when they make something available, it doesn't seem, to Councilman O'Farrell's point, all that difficult to put a QR code on the ad you're doing and continue to experiment with it and see how well it's doing.
There's also design opportunities too. So the QR code, when you look at it, looks very static, but you can actually integrate Los Angeles icons into the QR code itself, which would make it pop a little bit more for those that are walking by.
And to J.C. Decaux's credit, they usually work very well with us. They're generous in their
Great.
space.
So it sounds like there's definitely opportunity to do what Councilman O'Farrell had been suggesting in the motion, yes?
Yes, in fact, I don't want to take it off topic necessarily, but I think this is the genesis of even a bigger discussion in terms of how do we either use technology but also make better use of wayfinding system to really be able to, give that visitor the experience that they should have and be able to move, inflow and outflow from one region to another of LA. So I think timing is good for this conversation.
So I want to make sure that Councilman O'Farrell's motion doesn't just get
Right.
forgotten and that something happens with it. What would be your suggestion on how to proceed? How could you incorporate some of what they're asking for and to move forward so we can try this a little bit more and see if further use of it doesn't drive up the numbers?
Yeah, I think our first step will be to make sure that we are working as closely with the airport as we can to use all of those assets available to us. And so that would be, certainly we know the boards that are coming back up, we can incorporate it on that. But we'll also meet with J.C. Decaux and with the airport and understand what remnant space we can be using and what they can do there. Then we'd like to take the conversation outside of the airport. And so that there are a couple projects also under discussion that have to do with the county and with Metro. And I think incorporating either the QR codes or a substitute for that can be done. So my suggestion is that it's a two-step process. We continue the conversations that we're having with the airport, and then if we can, with the councilman's help, broaden that other discussion. Your help?
Sure.
As well.
And then maybe give us an updated report in 60 or 90 days?
Yeah, sounds fine.
I was going to do it in 45, but since you said 60, I'll say 60, but Mr. Gaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quite frankly, I'm surprised we don't have something like this already in our airport. Do we have an app?
I'd like to point out, on some of our Pardon Our Dust type signs where we're doing construction, we use QR codes to sort of inform, so the traveler, just doesn't see a sign, even though we give them information what's going on behind the scenes at the airport, just so it's in case they're interested, in case they want a little more information.
So the existing QR code specifically designed for updates on the construction.
But this is on our basically our construction barriers and things like that. It's just so just as an informational part of our development program. Yes.
Got it. I want to thank Mr. O'Farrell and Mr. Bond for leading this effort. I think it's going to continue to make us a world-class airport and bring in technology to the level that should be at our airport. Question for Bill. On the tracking, when you have the QR codes on your ads, I take it like magazine ads, when the number of hits, what do you guys average as far as on an annual basis, monthly basis on those hits?
It kind of depends on the publication, where it's being seen, and how people are using it, and how they're interacting with it. But roughly, it's not that much. I mean, you're seeing probably 1,000 hits on average when you're using the QR code. But again, it is easy to monitor. You use a short URL, and you associate it with the QR code, so you can go into the analytics and find out the number. So when we put these up there with the 26 mayor boards, we can easily monitor and come back once those are up and let you know exactly how many people are hitting those.
And just to piggyback what Mike said, visitors here in Los Angeles, are they able to, using this QR code on your ads, Are you focused on citywide sites like the Watts Towers, the LA Waterfront, the USS Iowa?
Yeah, the QR code goes to the site where the site has information about everything you can do in Los Angeles,
Okay.
especially the Watts Towers and areas around Los Angeles.
Very good.
And
Thank
where
you.
we have been very successful is in terms of the other social channels. And so I think you'll find that we've been quite aggressive in that regard and do have some very impressive metrics.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And just one more point. I just want to underscore that I think the point of the motion was to focus on the passenger, the tourist, the traveler experience. You know, I suppose it's nice for some people to have the construction updates, but I think most people would much prefer to know, you know, how to get to Disneyland or something like that, or something that's actually in the city of Los Angeles, maybe.
It's also the placement of the boards, just an FYI, because like if you're coming down from the arrival terminal and you're not able to scan the code because the board is too high, you want to be able to have some sort of call to
Yeah.
action, even if it's social. So it's also about placement.
And that's where our social icons have been on there.
One thing I did want to say, I still like people who I see in there. We do have volunteers who give tourists information.
We do have our volunteer program there.
And you have a good volunteer program there, right? How many volunteers you have out at Los
I
Angeles?
don't know the number off the top of my head.
But over 100, right?
Yeah.
Over 100, which is very good. That this gives the opportunity, a lot of people at social interchange.
Yeah. I
So
think Patty says she thinks it's about 300, and I would think...
300
probably
people, and they're all involved with the path, the museum too, in some way. I know they're,
Well, the Flight Path Learning Center is a separate...
Right.
But, yeah, they have their own...
there's a lot of people who
Yeah.
do volunteer, which is important, because I think it's nice to see it, because not everybody has a, what do you call them, a blackberry, blueberry, raspberry? Okay, you understand what I'm saying, Patty? So I think it's really important to have that to greet people, and I think the one most important thing we got to do is have somebody, when everybody, wherever they are, say, welcome to Los Angeles. Welcome for Los Angeles. When I was on a flight recently, the guy said, we're landing at LAX, and I wanted to go up and tell the guy, listen, you just say LAX, I'm thinking of a medicine they advertise on TV, you know, and I want them to say Los Angeles. So I think it's real important. Welcome to Los Angeles. And I will add too, Mark, and I don't know if the mayor's office is here. A couple of mayors before took his picture, Mr. Reardon, along with children from a local school that welcomed to Los Angeles, as opposed to a just solo shot of the mayor. So it was a little more representative. Just an idea. So if you pass it on to Eric, you know, you could do that. Just as one of those things. So anyway, that's okay. But I'll tell you, no one had a better smile than Mr. Villaraigosa. I will tell you that. So that's good. Thank you. 60 days, we're going to report back, and it's up to the deputy to work hard for the council member to push the departments and the tourist board to continue this discussion. I think you'll have someone from your office involved as well, and why don't you have someone too, so you could get the port angle. The other thing too, I just want to mention, my biggest district problem is because of technology, it puts people right behind the ear of their home to get to the Hollywood sign. And it's very difficult because there's no parking at the Hollywood sign or that area, and you can't actually get to the Hollywood sign, it's just a view. So it's a real technical challenge, and we're working with the Parks Department to try to get directions. And I'd like to work with the tourist boards to make sure there's the right information that they go to these locations as opposed to the narrow streets. Because the amazing thing about GPS, it's put great success in removing fear people had in driving in the narrow streets of Los Angeles and up the hills, because all of a sudden, 50 feet, turn left at Ledgewood. 200 feet, go right at Deronda.
Yeah.
50 feet, don't park in front of Mr. Johnson's house, because he'll call the councilman and get mad at us.
Well, I think you may have given them my phone number, because I was talking with one of your homeowners yesterday.
Right. No, they know how to use the Android or whatever it is there to call you. Right, and they do that. So that's good. Let's talk about it. Thank you all. 60 days. So let's try to get something turned on before the end of the year as technology moves. Thank you. Now, Madam CLA, we're going to have all the commissioners, if you could call them all, we're going to ask all 6 members. Val Lasco is reappointed, and she's not here today at this point, but we have all of you here, and the clerk's going to call you and come up, and we welcome all the appointees designee from Mr. Garcetti's office.
Yes, under items 1 through 6, we have the mayor's appointments to the Airport Commission. These are Mr. Gabriel Shake, Mr. Sean Burton, Dr. Cynthia Tellis, Ms. Beatrice Sue, Mr. Matthew Johnson, and Ms. Jackie Goldberg. They all have varying terms. Some might have 1 year, another has 2 or 3 years, and others have 5 years. So they are staggered terms, as you know. And one of the members has completed his statement of economic interest, and the City Ethics Commission staff has submitted a report on Mr. Johnson's statement of economic interest.
Have all of them passed that? Have all of them filed that?
Others have submitted them, but we do not have the reports yet.
But the mayor's representative, make sure that's done, because usually the council likes all that done before they get appointed, but, okay, that's the key. So, but let's start right here, if you would, and we'll just give an opening introduction, and this is an exciting time for all of you. I think it's an honor to serve in a commission. I've never served on a commission except Mayor Bradley's Youth Council, which got me here in so many years. So I'm welcoming all of you, some longtime friends, and some new friends as well. Please.
Right. Well, first of all, I want to thank council members here for your consideration of my appointment, and I am, if confirmed, I'm really looking forward to working with each of you. I do consider this a great honor and a privilege to serve the city of Los Angeles. As you may know, I've served on several other commissions for about 13 years in the past, but this is clearly probably the most interesting and challenging and exciting one. And just preliminarily, I haven't had a chance to look at all the data yet, obviously, but I've received some information, and my sense is that in spite of some differences, that on the whole, I think we all share a common vision of ensuring that the Los Angeles World Airports are world-class, that they're second to none. And I think that we all have the same goal of making sure that Los Angeles International Airport continues to be a formidable institution, particularly in light of the fact that we are operating in an increasingly competitive global environment. And so in terms of our trade, our commerce, it's our major gateway for these things, and ultimately for job creation and smart growth. So I think that there are, again, some differences in terms of methods, but I believe that our common interests will bind us together, and then we will find the solutions and the common ground to move forward so that we, again, are a world-class airport at the same time that we consider the needs and interests of our neighboring communities very seriously in this effort.
Well, thank you, Cynthia, very much.
She didn't state her name for the record, I think.
For the record, for the clerk, for the tape.
Cynthia Tellis.
Yeah, and you have great history. I like the most history I like the best is when you were on the Library Commission.
Yes, I love that. It was a
Very
wonderful job.
Very-
I loved it. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to ask opening inductions, and there'll be questions later. Someone who served the city well, the state well, Jackie Goldberg. Please, Jackie.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity to appear in your committee and before the council later today. My name is Jackie Goldberg, and I, too, am honored to have received this appointment recommendation, which you're going to act upon, I hope, in a positive manner. What she said, I say ditto to, which is not surprising since we've worked on things before, but this is my first commission appointment. And I'm looking forward to it. For me, issues are what to do with Ontario, how to get in and out of the airport in less than 40 minutes. It takes me longer to get out of the airport when I arrive than it does to go from the airport to AMCO Park. So that gives you some idea of a problem that I think we need to address. And I'm concerned that there be labor peace and that we have employment opportunities for Angelinos at the airport where people make a living wage and have health care. Those are issues very important from when I was on the council, near and dear to my heart. But I'm also concerned that the traveling passenger, which I often am, has a good experience and it finds it something they talk about when they go home. Boy, I sure thought arriving at LAX was wonderful. I don't think a whole lot of people say that today yet because of the traffic and other issues, but I don't think any of them are insurmountable. And with a panel such as the one that I am seated here with, I think we can get at some of this.
Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Yes.
My name is Matthew Johnson. I also thank the committee for having me before you and the opportunity to serve. My second, I guess, pretty much everything that's been said before me. I think we're united in having an airport that is both world-class and a good neighbor. I am public service is part of my DNA, and I can't think of a better way to serve the city than serving on the Airport Commission. It's a gateway to our city, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. I've been in LA for 20 years. I would guess, I haven't spoken to all of my fellow people who would be on this board, but my guess is I probably travel more than anyone on the commission. And I think there's some room for improvement at our airport, and I look forward to hopefully serving on the board.
Thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, Sean Burton. I want to just thank the mayor for nominating me for the commission and for your consideration. I'm honored to serve potentially with very esteemed commissioners here. I think the mayor's office has put together quite a panel of commissioners that are substantive and have varied experience that will really benefit the issues that need to be dealt with at the airport. The airport is obviously, all the airports, but the LAX is a major economic driver in this region, third busiest airport in the country, source of a lot of jobs, and something that needs real focus going forward. And I think a real opportunity for the mayor and the council going forward. There's issues, there's major litigation that needs to be resolved. There's been labor issues out there, and they're in the midst of a multi-billion-dollar development project that needs real attention. But I think we have the commission and the council and the mayor to deal with it, and I look forward to working with everybody and the community on those issues.
Thank you very much. Gabriel.
Good morning. My name is Gabriel Shake. I'd like to welcome the council members, also my fellow nominees. I'd also like to welcome my parents, Simone and David Shagian, who are visiting from New York.
Where's your parents?
My parents are right there.
Stand up, stand up, stand up. Let's welcome them.
All right.
Thank you.
It reminds me of the first day of school.
This is going to be the first day of school.
Lovely. I like that. I like that a lot.
Anyway, as Matthew well said, I second what all of my fellow commissioner nominees have said. The airport system is something that needs to be developed into a world-class environment. It's also the gateway to Los Angeles, and for people to come here from all over the world, from all over the nation, they need to see what Los Angeles is all about. And by providing a world-class experience is the first impression that we give people of Los Angeles when they land here. It's a major economic driver. I think there's an opportunity to create an impact, not just by optimizing the economics of the airport system itself, but also drive further growth for an economy that continues to be on the upswing, and also take advantage of the airline industry's renewed upswing as well. They've cut their costs, and there's an opportunity to take advantage of what they have to offer. Working together with the council, with our wonderful mayor, with my commission, I think we have an opportunity to really take this to the next level. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, thank you for that introduction there. Michael, would you like to ask any questions?
Yeah, thank you. I'll save all my trick questions for downstairs when we're on television. But first, I want to note that I've met with each of the nominees individually and spent at least a half hour with each of them, longer in some cases. And I do want to commend the mayor for his selection. I have, over the course of 17 years, met literally dozens of airport commissioners, and I have been extremely impressed by this particular group, individually and collectively. I think you bring a set of talents and experiences and interests that are really going to make this a very good commission. And I'm glad that everybody seems to have got the talking point about my phrase about world-class airport and first-class neighborhood. That's good. But you got my talking points on living wage, so we're all good. I did have a couple questions.
Blow it here.
One, first of all, Gabriel, something you didn't mention. Can you tell us all what your first job was?
At the age of 15 years old, I was working for Trans World Airlines at JFK International Airport, throwing bags and checking in passengers. So, I spent 15 years in the airline industry. At the end of my career, I was turning around airlines and saving them from bankruptcy and working with C-level all over the world management.
That's great. I'm particularly glad to have that level of airport experience on the commission. I think that's going to be an important addition. That actually raises a separate question. You have some good experience working at an airport, and each of you have spoken to me about your desire to sort of really understand how the airport is managed, and each of you talked in different terms about that. I also want to make sure that you get a sense of how the airport is run, and I'm wondering if each of you could commit to spending some time at some aspect of the airport, whether it's baggage handling or concessions or TSA or planning, and understanding a little bit on the ground of what the employees are doing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Great. I'd also like to ask, this is the commitment section of our program, is there's one member of the commission, Val Velasco, who has served on the commission for 8 years. She has been the voice of the neighborhoods and the voice of the community. I've asked each of you to meet with her, and everybody has agreed. I'm wondering, though, I want to make sure that Val is not the only person who's listening to the neighborhood. And I'm wondering if in the course of your first year, you could each go with me and Val to a community meeting of some sort, a neighborhood council meeting or an RSAC board meeting, and just spend some time with the community outside of the confines of the boardroom where people get 60 or 120 seconds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to ask is if each of you will commit to using some sort of public transportation to get to the airport, whether it's the Green Line, I would budget extra time, or the flyaway system or the bus. I think it's very important for folks to understand as we try to improve our connections what they are.
Absolutely.
Good suggestion. Already done it.
Okay. I knew it was with you, so that one's easy for you. All right, a couple specific questions. What do you think you could actually do? What role could you contribute to actually improve the relationship between the airport and the community? I've talked with each of you about how one of the things I hope that LAWA can build into is the kind of positive and constructive relationship I see now in the port, which we didn't see 20 years ago, but the port actually has a very good relationship on the whole with the neighboring community, and I'd like us to get to that point with Westchester, Playa del Rey, and Inglewood, Lenox, and do you have any thoughts on how we could do that? Anyone?
Well, I think, first of all, your suggestion that we participate with you in a community meeting is a good one. To make sure that the airport is a good neighbor, you first have to understand what it is that what the neighbors are looking for. And it's not really until you have a good sense of the areas that maybe people feel that are that the airport is falling short before you can really start to address things. So first, it's really just getting as good of an understanding of the issues as possible, and then my guess is we're not going to be able to make everybody happy all the time. So it's dealing with people honestly and transparently, and with a goal towards finding common ground that works for everyone.
And Mike, I don't know if this answers your question, but kind of community involvement defines my career in many respects. Even though I've had many different kinds of jobs, most of them have involved my being a liaison to communities in one fashion, whether it's in the world of philanthropy or academia or other kinds of boards. And I am very committed to being a good listener and to taking those needs into consideration very seriously. I'm well aware of the impact and the disruptive impact that construction and other kinds of actions have on communities and on families. And so I'm certainly committed to figuring out what would be the very best solution that we could find in this regard.
Just to add to that point, I think I've had the privilege of serving on the Planning Commission for the last 4.5 years and chaired the Area Planning Commission on the west side before that. And, part of what we dealt with there was a developer who wanted to push a project forward, but a community that had serious concerns about those issues. Often there were labor issues as well, and our job was to try to bring those together And so I think the tenets of engagement of the community and respect of the community are very important. Often we would find when we engage with the community that they felt that the system wasn't transparent, that the deals were made in the back room, that they didn't really have a chance to have their voice heard. So I think bringing the community in early and being open about the process is really critical in resolving these issues.
There are a number of elements of the recently approved master plan. The connection to the airport from rail, the consolidated rental car center, the people mover, the north runway, the midfield satellite concourse, a number of other things. I'm wondering if you can tell me which project you're most interested in seeing completed. There's various right answers and one wrong answer, by the way.
But no tension, no pressure.
I'll take that. I'll answer that. I think the transportation element to the airport, along with the people mover, is going to be the most critical component of, I believe, what we may be achieving over the course of our commissioner lifetime. We are the only city that doesn't have a major city in the United States or in the world that doesn't have a transportation system that leads you into the airport directly without having to make multiple connections on and off. And as I said, it's really about the impression that people get about Los Angeles when they first land here or even when they leave about how difficult the city is to navigate. And that confirms it right there. So by fixing that issue, I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us.
I'm concerned about that too, but I'm also concerned about the fact that the new fast track on the 110 means that people who pick up people at the airport and who don't use the 110 regularly are all getting tickets. Because even if you have 3 people or 4 people in your car, if you don't have the fast track device, you get a multi-$100 ticket. And I think that's really a bad way to join Los Angeles, is to have the person who picked you up get a huge ticket in the mail. Because there's nothing that lets you know you're going to get that ticket while you're driving there. But it happened to my family, so I'm very aware of it. And I think it's just terrible that people coming from the airport who are going to the downtown area, almost all take the 110, almost all have 3 or 4 people in the car, and almost all get tickets. So I think that's just a bad situation beyond how they get in and out of the airport.
So I guess you want us each to answer. For me, one of the things that intrigued me about this appointment, among other things, was figuring out a way to create easier public access to the airport. And, the things that have already been suggested are ones that I'm very interested in, which is, the Green Line, figuring out a solution to that so that it comes close enough to the airport to ensure that we have easy access, and certainly the intermodal transportation facility, the people mover, all of those things I think are going to be critical to figure out how to stage and how to coordinate. So it's a very interesting kind of challenge, I think.
One of the main reasons why I was interested in joining the commission was to help improve the passenger experience. So a lot of the things you mentioned really go to that, and that's whether it's transportation in and out of the airport, a people mover in the airport, a consolidated rental car center, the actual physical plant of the airport. To your point earlier about greeters in the airport and with having for especially those people coming in from out of the country, as I walk through the international terminal, which I do all the time, I always think about how scary it would be if this was the first time I was coming into our country. A lot. As to one particular issue, I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that today. But really, just the passenger experience in general are issues that I'm most passionate about.
Benefit of going last is all the good ideas have been said, but I'm very passionate about the rail issue and also improving the customer experience. I mean, you fly in and out of LaGuardia, and you sit in certain terminals, and there's an iPad there, and you can order your food, and they bring it to you, and the bathrooms are clean, and everything's modern. It's a very different experience, and it's particularly true when you travel internationally. I do think, though, we spent a lot of time talking about the issues we did. From my perspective, first and foremost, safety and security still have to be paramount, because without that, and you have a former police officer on on the council who can speak to that. Without that, none of these other things matter. The planes need to take off and land safely. There's a lot of, putting in new runway lights. There's a lot of other airfield improvements that need to happen, unrelated to the runway movement. There's a lot of other things that need to happen, and security needs to be paramount as well. So I want to make sure we don't take our eye off the ball on those issues either.
A question that Councilmember Goldberg alluded to was the living wage. Back when she was on the council, we passed a living wage ordinance for the city of Los Angeles, and then Bill and Janice Hahn worked very hard to expand that and modify it for employees working at Los Angeles International Airport. Do you see any room for improvement in that, and what do you think we could do?
I think the living wage has not kept up with the times. Inflation, particularly in healthcare, is dramatically higher than we anticipated when we put in, I think, a couple of bucks for healthcare. And I also think there are some things within the living wage ordinance, which I helped write, that are just outdated. I mean, it's been 20 years. So, no, not 20 years, 13 years or 15 years. But it's been a while. And so I do think it's worth looking at, and I do look forward to working with you and this committee, as well as other parts of the city council and the mayor's office, and how to do this in a way that's effective and yet doesn't have any downsides to it.
Anybody else? Any thoughts on the living wage?
Jackie said it all.
We did.
Okay. Final question. I do want to ask a specific question about the lawsuit, the lawsuits against the airport right now. You've all talked about a number of things that you'd like to see done, and I think everybody, and I want to underscore this, everybody, whether they live whether they sit on this council, whether they sit on the commission, whether they work at the airport, or whether they live in Westchester or Playa del Rey, is 100% behind LAX modernization. Right now we have a bunch of lawsuits that are jamming us up and are holding all of these projects back for the time being, including the things that everybody agrees on. Do any of you have any thoughts about how we move beyond that and get moving on modernization?
I'll speak to that issue just briefly. My instinct is that there's a lot more that we agree on than we disagree on, and I think it would be a shame if the progress and modernization of the airport is held hostage to a single issue. I think the mayor's spoken about this as well. That's an important issue, needs to be resolved, but it doesn't have to be the first issue resolved. And, there's a lot of people that need jobs, and the airport needs improvement. So I would hope that we could focus on those issues and come to the runway issues later.
Yeah, I would agree with Sean.
I would say settling those lawsuits is quite critical.
Yep.
And I do think there may be a role for a new commission in doing that, because we'll have a new look at it. We aren't bound by all of the fights that have already gone on. I mean, we haven't participated in them, and that's, I have found when I was doing all the stuff we did in Hollywood, that a new face sometimes makes a difference, even if you have some of the same positions.
Yeah.
But it's just a different approach. But I would say that I would urge us as a commission to actually engage in this process to see if we can't resolve some of those things that get this. Because without the lawsuits going on, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
So we got to settle them. They have to be a priority.
And we're blessed with a top-notch attorney on the commission. Look to him for his guidance.
This is always good.
I'll have some more downstairs.
Thank you very much, Michael. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you. I want to recognize Mayor Garcetti for bringing to us a well-qualified, a diverse group of commissioners to serve our airport. I want to thank you also for your commitment to serve our city in this as commissioners. For us, and thank you, Mr. Bonin, for those key questions, some of those questions that I had. Mr. Burton, thanks for addressing the public safety component of making sure our airport remains safe. My question, we've heard this over the last 18 months on regionalization, how it relates to Ontario Airport. Can you just give me your thoughts specifically on what to do with Ontario Airport?
I will.
Okay.
I'll take. I think Ontario Airports is one that has tremendous opportunities that haven't been looked at with a fresh set of eyes. I think as part of this commission, we have an opportunity to look at it as a regional airport that connect together in the LAWA fold as something that complements LAX and also Van Nuys, even though it's not a real passenger, public passenger airport. But there needs to be an opportunity that looks at Ontario as an element of LAWA that remains, but also that's potentially privatized. And there's a pilot program in the United States that's been talked about but hasn't been actuated for many of the airports in the United States about actually privatizing them and bringing in some private capital there to see its growth. And because of the issues that LAX itself faces, we can imagine that the LAWA staff hasn't had a great amount of time to focus on what to do with Ontario, especially in the downturn of the economy and also the downturn in the airline industry. So all of the elements and all of the options of what Ontario represents for the City of Los Angeles are critical, and they will be looked at by the Commission.
Very good.
I'm of two minds. Part of me thinks selling it to the City of Ontario for whatever it cost LAWA to, just recouping our money without making a profit, but recouping our money is maybe an option. The big problem as I see it, Ontario, is very simple. The people who live around it don't fly. Okay? So you need a passenger base. Now, the passenger base is probably in the San Gabriel Valley, okay, for that airport, and maybe even in the northern part of Orange County. Because from the northern part of Orange County, you're closer to Ontario than you are to John Wayne. So I think if we can work out transportation that is cheap, like the shuttle that I take from the terminal annex downtown, and we can encourage, maybe even discuss with the airlines when we renew their leases with us, that they will put more flights there, and we can work out how to get people there who do fly. Because I don't think just saying that, we can make some improvements there is going to work. Because frankly, the population base closest to it doesn't fly. So you have to figure out who will and how to get them there, and why they would go there instead of to LAX. And they would go there if it was the same price and not more expensive to fly, and if flights were convenient, and if they could get there easily. And I think we ought to explore that first. Failing in that, then I think it's time to talk about saying to the City of Ontario, because right now I don't think we do Ontario as a city a favor giving it to them, because unless they can solve the same problems we have, it'll just be a bust for them too. And I'm not anxious to participate in giving them something that won't work for them.
Thank you.
Well, I haven't looked at all the data in relation to Ontario Airport. I have some general sense of some of the issues, but I find some of the comments of my fellow commissioners very intriguing in terms of how we might actually enhance the relationship, even create a synergy within LAWA. And I imagine there could be a point in time where we might consider transferring the authority back to Ontario. However, we would have to look very carefully at capacity issues there in Ontario and skill, but also to make sure, as our fiduciary duty I'm sure would demand, that we get adequately compensated in relation to that.
Good.
And lastly, Mr. Chair, I say that LAX should be the premier destination for international national transfers. How can we better improve that? I mean, do we have a hub?
We do not have.
Can you address that?
Accordingly, United Airlines claims that Los Angeles is a hub airline for LAX, but when you look at the actual market share of United Airlines, it's exactly the same as American and also almost Southwest. They each have about 15% of the market share at LAX. But it is important from an economic activity standpoint to look at LAX and how it can be developed as a hub for one or potentially two airlines. There's traffic coming from Asia. There's growth also in Latin America, and we're in a specific geographic entry point at the United States where we can really capture a tremendous amount of traffic and grow our economic base here.
Very good. Thank you. I want to thank Mayor Garcetti again for bringing to us well-qualified. You all have the skills and knowledge and abilities to lead this airport into the future, and there's going to be some game-changing opportunities here under your leadership that I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Anyway, I want to second that. What a great honor it is to serve. I'm glad you brought your parents, because this is a special day, and we remember the joy when we do have a chance to serve. That's a great honor to serve.
Always.
You all know on that issue here. It's very complicated. Three things move the city: water and power, the harbor, and the airport economically. And it's in our history. It's how this city grew. So to focus on this is extremely key. Jackie, what you spoke about of the transit way is so right on, because when you're on the 105, you're in a carpool lane, and then is that a transit way or you don't know, and boom, I got pulled over. but it was before the deadline.
No.
And then David Goldstein came and caught me from Channel 2 News, because there was something there, but I paid my fine, whatever it was.
That was big.
Yeah, well, it wasn't big then, now it's
It is
big.
now.
But the MTA needs to review that whole issue, because it's not just here, but also in the San Bernardino El Monte extended busway, but we'll work with you on that as well. Legal issues are key, because there's no fun spending all those years. How many years did you have to spend fighting out at Wilshire and Kenmore instead of, and then we finally got a beautiful school? 5, 7, 8 years, whatever it was.
At least.
At the old ambassador on that.
No, it's actually 20 years.
20 years.
That was a 20-year.
20-year fight. Ontario, the one thing too is local control, and there's a growing movement, but you're right on, there isn't a flight base that is there. It's not a gateway to the desert. It's too close to Palm Springs. Palm Springs promotes their flights. Is it that close to Orange County come up? So it's a factor. But the one thing that I've heard from the people of Ontario is they want to try to give it a run. So if that could be, if we're equal, I'm okay with that, but that's a real important issue to look at. In and out of the airport experience is so key, to look at that. As Michael said, to do some of the jobs or see it, to visit how much time you could spend, the better it is when you make those special decisions, which is key. And then also on the issues of transit in the airport, the biggest issue will be whether and how we get the transit from the Crenshaw line and the Expo line into the airport. If Los Angeles went to heaven right now, and whoever you see at heaven, I would see St. Peter, but whoever you'd see. I don't want to get in trouble, the city attorney's not here. But anyway, well, I hope to get there, Michael.
Careful.
Anyway, we would get in because, right or wrong, we got water. Without water, we didn't build a Pueblo. A lot of good things we did. The Hollywood Bowl, good thing that we did, all that way. But as far as what we did to the red card, removing that, or even freeways are great when it's Sunday morning, but still, the issue of transit, subway, no stop at the Hollywood Bowl, mistake. There's a plaque for Brian Moore, God rest his soul. He fought it, then they went a different direction. Green Line not into the airport. I know there was different times, there was a lot of jobs in the South Bay, but still, you talk to people. That's going to be a big decision, how easy it is for you with a suitcase to get out of Tom Bradley International and to get to transit. And you started a lot of this, Peggy Stevenson before you, Mike Wu, all of you pushed it along. Hollywood under Mr. Garcetti has really flourished. The tough hotels that used to be there on Vermont and on Hollywood are now tourist hotels. And people are coming, and you could not have a car and enjoy Los Angeles because of transit. Expo line is key. So that's the biggest thing that Michael, I think, mentioned in his opening remarks. I want to remember, safety and security, that's the biggest thing overall every day. My concern, I just met with the police department, and I said to them, okay, doesn't matter if it's upstairs or downstairs, but if I walk in and do a bad thing at the baggage area, I can walk in right now. If I walk in upstairs, there's 50 TSA. I want to look at the back door too, because all the headline will say in Los Angeles today, there was an incident at Los Angeles International Airport where blah, 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 and I don't want to mention the blah, blah, blah. But look at that safety on the lower level, because it's right there. And, Mike wants to take you to Westchester and to Lenox. I guess Arnold Sachs got to you and takes you to Inglewood Hawthorne. I want to see if some of you, because you will be asked to travel, when you do travel, and if you're in, like the Korea did a wonderful thing with their new airport, but it's so far out, but they got high-speed rail right into their town, it makes a difference. Maybe if we did that with Palmdale, but we're not doing it this century, maybe that would have been something. But how can we see what the other cities do in the world? And in our country, Mark Adams, when I asked earlier about hi-fi and lo-fi and airports, find out which is number one. What is the best mitigation? Because, you read about the fights of farmers in Japan, the people who live next to Heathrow, all these issues, yet there's some mitigation that could be done, because we all live next to something. People who live next to Taylor Yard don't like the Metrolink. We like the Metrolink because it moves people, but the train comes through 20 minutes, every 20 minutes. Some of these things that you all have experience on, I think, will be key as you look forward. What neighborhood mitigation is doing and effectively in the window, double painting windows or whatever. Because Westchester's, they did make the big buyout. on the west, and I remember all the buildings that were moved around the town when I was in high school. They moved them all from the airport that were there where above the Playa del Rey.
You can still see the foundations.
Right, of the streets. They didn't tear the streets out. They should have torn the streets out then, but they didn't have the money, but whatever the case may be. So look at that internationally, because this is a very important thing. And the one thing about hubs, Virgin flies, and someone from Sydney wants to go to Mexico, they don't come into L.A. I got that. They transit, and they hub down there. Because someone once said, well, what if Ontario was the hub to the south? Well, people don't want to go to two airports. This is a very good airport. I have a special appreciation for the leadership that Gina Marie Lindsay has performed these last several years in moving it forward, because there were starts and stops and starts and stops. I think Mr. Bradley would be happy that this city is now international. I think the Olympic Games changed that dynamic, that we do welcome the world. Now how we have to manage the world when it comes and the impacts on neighborhoods, etc., will be. Only because we know each other, Jackie. I think you're the only one who ever been to the old LA airport going to Morningside High, and everything was east of Sepulveda. And the only thing I wanted to say, if you're ever not sleeping at night or you're in your hotel room somewhere in the world and you go on, there's a movie by Stanley Kubrick called The Killing, and Sterling Hayden held up the Santa Anita, and this was the airport. I'm the bad guy. And there's the police officers, but they were in plain clothes over there standing there, and there's a crowd of people. And there was a chain link fence, and Lisa Schechter was the Hollywood starlet with a poodle in her hand, okay? And right where you sit was the jet with the props. And here came the baggage cart. The poodle jumped out of Lisa's lap, went in front of the baggage cart. They hit the brakes. All the money, this is Kubrick's masterpiece, went into the chain link fence. Believe me, you're the plane right there. I'm the bad guy who just held up Santa Anita. And there's this detectives. They're looking for me. They know who I am. And the end of the movie is they didn't get the money. The point is, that was the aircraft, that close to you. It's changed so dramatically. You know, we used to go, wasn't it fun going to get people at the airport and welcome them? Now you can't. You want to just, you know, it's just, that whole experience is gone because of security issues. So trying to figure that out, I think, is real important. Taking care of neighborhoods, both El Segundo, Englewood, the other surrounding communities, and especially Westchester. But we do live near things, and it is urban, and we have to balance them out, and safety is number one. So you have a half hour, and you're assigned to take your parents up to the tower, the Tom Bradley Tower. And also, I do make one correction. When we came in here, when Janice Hahn was here, who was a great leader for this committee, people from the airport would come and talk about TIBIT. You know what TIBIT is? Good.
An acronym that shall not be used ever.
Acronym will not be used. International Terminal.
Please.
I know, but he said the Tom Bradley.
Caught me.
They would, you know, acronyms don't count. Like, I got to find that pilot from Thai Airways, LAX, now arriving in LAX, so you could go in LAX, and it's 58 degrees in LAX. It broke my heart. You know. You're going to have a great time, and you're going to do good for the city, which is so important. Yes.
I will ask a couple more questions downstairs, but I did want to say two quick things about airport neighbors. One, I did want to mention Lenox.
Yeah.
Lenox is not part of the city of Los Angeles. There's not a single person in Lenox that I represent. There's not a single person in Lenox that can ever vote for me. So when I speak up for Lenox, it's not because of the politics. It's because it's a legit concern. Lenox is an unincorporated part of the county that sits right under the flight path. It is a very low-income neighborhood. It's a primarily Latino neighborhood. And because it is a tiny, unincorporated portion of a very large county, its voice never gets heard. Most of the homes there are not eligible for soundproofing because they're not up to code and people can't afford to bring them up to code.
Is there a way around that?
It's hard. But one of the things I want to ask, I mean, if you sit underneath that flight path in a home or a school, the buildings literally shake. Literally shake. Classes are interrupted. And one of the things I'd ask, because the folks who live and work there, many of whom work at the airport or the hotels around it, won't be able to take the day off work to come to your commissions and testify. You will not hear their voices as often as you will folks from Westchester or El Segundo or Englewood. And I want to implore you to please pay attention to Lenox. because it really gets, to be somewhat impolite about it, it gets screwed, and it doesn't get heard enough. And I do want to say something about Westchester, because I do represent them, and they do vote for me.
And they do vote, yes.
I think I mentioned to most of you two numbers, both in their 20s. One is 25. That is the percentage of the folks who live in Westchester and Playa del Rey who have a member of their household who have an employee badge at LAX. 25% of the folks who live in Westchester and Playa del Rey work at that airport, have a member of the family who works at that airport in some capacity. Doesn't count the folks who have an aunt or a cousin who lives in a different household, and it doesn't count the indirect jobs, the folks who own a rental car company or who own a restaurant that thrive because of that airport. And I want folks to understand that the people who live in Westchester and Playa del Rey love that airport and are very invested in seeing it thrive and become a great place for travelers. The other number is 22. That is the percent increase in air passengers, the number of passengers annually, that the folks in Westchester and Playa del Rey are willing to accommodate. Right now, the airport handles in the mid-60s of millions of passengers every year. The community agreed in a settlement years ago and agreed in their advocacy of the Master Plan Alternative 2 to allow that airport to grow to 78.9 million annual passengers. That means that my constituents are embracing and endorsing a growth of air travel at that airport of 22%. And yet there are still people in Los Angeles who call them NIMBYs. And I would ask for your help in smashing that lie, because you may disagree on public policy issues, you may disagree on configuration or geometry of an airfield, but you can't call folks who are willing to grow that airport 22% NIMBYs, because I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any other project in the city where neighbors are saying, please grow it 22%. Just wanted to leave it at that.
Very good. Commissioner Sue will hold her until sometime in the future.
Yes.
And this is a great discussion. We want to thank you all. You have a 20-minute call before you go to council, so we want to welcome you. No other business before us?
I just want to remind you that we have only one of the statements of economic interests
Right.
that have been reported on.
You're an ethics commission.
Mine's in, they
Yeah,
called
you're
me
in.
yesterday to
Right.
confirm it was fine.
The municipal
Johnson's in.
code requires council have the ethics review, report on its, the review of your statements.
Would you call the ethics commission right now in the next 20 minutes? And would you, as the mayor's deputy, go make something happen?
I'm very puzzled because I turned mine in and I confirmed, but actually having been a former ethics, I confirmed that they had received it and they told me they'd have no problem getting the report back to you. So I'm a little puzzled
Me
about
too.
what.
They called me.
Well, it's a very-
We'll work
you-
on it. We got 20 minutes. If we don't, we'll have 19
You've
if
had
we
a
don't adjourn the
very
meeting.
quick turnaround time. It's
Okay.
not your fault.
Yeah.
Just a technical, all right, this meeting's adjourned. We'll see you in council.
Can you please
Vote to approve. Well, we approve them.
Details, details. Yeah. Details.
We've been waiting on